Hello and welcome to the EuroSTAR October webinar series, and apologies for the delay in getting started here today. Today's webinar title is Test Smart, Test Intelligent GenNext Automation, and today's presenters are Vishal, Mehrotra and Ruediger, Spies. If you have any questions for today's presenters, please type them into the questions field on your control panel, and we will address these questions at the very end of the webinar. So you're aware, you can type these at any point, not just at the end of the webinar. You can get a copy of the slides as well as recording of the webinar on the EuroSTAR conference website after the webinar is over. And finally, if you want to join the conversation on Twitter, you can do so using the hashtag ESComms, and you can connect with the EuroSTAR conferences team at ESComms, as well as TCS using at TCS_news. So I'll now hand you over to today's presenter, and to kick things off, we'll have Ruediger. Hello, Ruediger.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. And we should start with a presentation on, of course, on the first slide, which shows, hopefully to all of you, the title of this introduction for the webcast, titled Test Smart, Test Intelligent GenNext Automation. And this first part will be from an analyst view, analyst insofar as I'm a member of the Pierre Ruediger Consultants, an analyst company based in Paris and Munich with a major focus on Europe. Now, before we go into detail on tests, you should see now on slide number 2, where we currently see the business environment and the technical environment be developing as an introduction, so to speak, to the testing theme we have today. On the business side, we say very clearly completely unchanged budget situations for the enterprises. The IT budgets overall are more or less stagnating, or in some cases, especially in large organizations, decreasing, which has clearly an influence on the testing for the software teams, for the software development teams, and which the next point is also a very important one with an influence on testing, that we see that currently international enterprises become more or less globally integrated enterprises, meaning that they are not only sourcing from their direct environment, but they source from the best place where they can get resources from, and that very often means sourcing from places where wages are lower, so that the teams for development and for testing may be widespread around the world, with clearly an influence on the performance of these teams. The third important point here is that business cycles are continuously shrinking, which has again consequences for the support organizations in general of large enterprises, and that also includes IT. On the technical side, we see a couple of trends that are influencing dramatically testing, software testing. You have heard for sure all of them, and you have read about them in the press and heard about them in other media. I will not go into detail, but at least I will mention them here as the core points, which are cloud, social media, mobile, big data, and related analysis tools, including real-time analysis that directly influence transactional processing. And that has a consequence on traditional applications, on traditional transactional applications in large enterprises. They currently are in the process to become cloudified. They get mobile access. Analysis is integrated. More and more data are related to these transactional applications. And some of them, at least in parts, are moved to in-memory computing environments. So a lot of test requirements result out of these trends for large enterprises. In addition, we see virtualization on all levels. that includes hardware networks, and you can see the rest here on the slides, but also operating system and as well applications, where the testing is the key focus here. And in addition, there is clearly a skills shortage currently in the market for software developers. There are not enough developers and not enough testers, so the testing and the development process has to become more efficient. Now, the bottom line here is very simple, of course. The tougher business climate increases pressure on IT in general, and in particular on the development teams, including testing. Now, if we move now to the next slide and look a little bit deeper in the challenges for software and systems development, we see that the developers and testers, and I use that as a synonym now from now on, are in a real dilemma. They very often decide between better design and development or test, and not both. And that is because the faster business cycles have a pressure on the time, so testing really becomes a bottleneck. And as we have seen it in the past from large software vendors, many companies go and let the end users finally make the final test for the software, which clearly is not a good choice, because we have just finished a study which is published on the PAC website, where we have looked a little bit deeper into the testing market. There is a series of large projects mentioned that failed because testing was not taken seriously enough. Another thing is that complexity is growing in light of the trends just discussed on the slide before. So all the virtualization and software-defined anything makes testing more complex, more dependent, and under more constraints as in the past, which also is a result of enterprise systems being available 24 hours, 7 days a week, so that constrained resources, especially large transactional systems of large organizations, are not available for test cycles, for testing. So the testing team has only very short time windows where they can do their job. And in addition, as discussed already, we have the distributed development teams around the world. This makes communication between them not very easy. And therefore, it is a number one requirement for test teams to get the testing right the first time. Which brings us to the next slide, which is slide number 4, which you should see now on your screen if the image has brought up over the network. The solution may be a diversity of different testing tools for the testing teams. We have seen that from the analyst side that test teams have invested in point solutions and point testing solutions, which may be a short-term answer to a couple of questions. But of course, there are a number of bottlenecks and a number of disadvantages if you go for point solutions. Of course, the scope of these point test solution is clearly limited. You may generate holes in the testing process in between the different point solutions, and people focus very often on the user interface of a point solution, and if you move from point solution to point solution for testing, the user interface is clearly different, so that there may be also not the full scope of the test point solutions that are used. Therefore, on the other side, there are integrated solutions, but they also have a couple of disadvantages. On the one side, they are seen as inflexible because they are as they are, so you have to use them as a whole thing. And very often their scope is limited, their functionality is limited, so that you don't get anything, everything that you need to put the software under test in a real stress situation. And then the effect comes again that point solutions are added, which again brings you out of the advantage which an integrated solution has. But there is fortunately a little bit help from the theoretical side, and we always should keep this in mind if there are complex challenges coming to us. And it says, the result of this research says that it is not appropriate to react to complex triggers, here in this case complex challenges, like testing with simple point solutions or point reactions. This cannot work because single causes are treated independently in these situations, although they may be dependent on each other, and therefore they need an integrated, weighted response. As a consequence, and translated to a testing suite environment, means you should try to get, of course, the best from all sides and combine these point solutions with the integrated world, delivering and using an integrated test solution, which of course has a couple of requirements, as we see, and hopefully you all see that now on the page number 5 of this little presentation, were the requirements for a combined approach of an integrated test suite to join together with point solution is shown. Of course you should have, and that is a clear advantage for all users, a single user interface for all functions of the integrated test solution, even if you integrate point solutions into these integrated suites to add additional functionality, which combines here the point number 1 and number 2 on the slide. It should also give support to traditional development environments and also to very future-oriented development environments, as they are listed here in a couple of examples on the slide. They should very easily allow user interface integration tests, and that is a very important point now. The next one, the service virtualization, should be supported, where service virtualization is used from a couple of test teams currently, but it is not yet generally accepted that that is a very good approach. We think that test virtualization should be used more and more intensively because it will overcome constraints that come from enterprise systems that have to be available around the clock, which are not available for individual and standalone tests. If you can generate an environment that simulates, so to speak, not just as mock-ups, but as a real virtualized, real environment, this gives a much, much better chance to get error-free software code, and therefore service virtualization should be on the list of testers in the future more and more. Now, of course, the traditional ones, test data and test case generation, should be included in such a suite. And what we also think, and what we learn from other enterprise applications, is that analysis tools should be integrated, on the one hand, to measure the performance of different testing methods, to measure the performance of individual testers and the results, and measure the learning effect from project to project. So analysis tools that not only go to the data from the originally integrated environment, but also those that get the data from the add-on point solutions which are integrated into the test suite. Now, finally, of course, it should manage the complete test cycle. No holes should be there in between. Testers should not be allowed to leave any holes in the complete testing cycle. So a bottom line here on this short introduction from an analyst point of view is that the integrated approach to testing and test suites has proven to be successful in the past. And the business impact for the enterprises is that these test suites will enable a faster time to production and thus faster time to value, and therefore prove that IT can deliver on the promise and will no longer be under pressure. With this, I thank you for the first part, for listening to this first part, and I would like to give control now to Vishal for the second part of the presentation. Vishal Mehrotra is a Senior General Manager of TCS, also responsible for the intelligent testing systems. And Vishal, I think I hand the mic now over to you.
Thank you, Ruediger. Just wanting to see if I'm able to change the slides. Mr. Ruediger, I don't think I'm able to do it. Yes. Okay, thanks, Ruediger. So that was a wonderful session with clear insight how the customer should approach and mitigate the gaps existing between the new environments that are coming up or that are shaping up and the challenges that the customers experience every day. Hello all, I am Vishal Mehrotra. What I'm going to talk about in my next session are the trends and the challenges that we see as a system integrator and the futuristic solution that we are bringing to you. I'm sure you heard Ruediger and you would agree with what he talked about. We also have been researching and speaking to multiple of our customers, trying to identify the challenges in the software testing space. And what we discovered, while people are talking about automation, they are actually intending test execution. Now, there were so many untapped areas in the software lifecycle. There is a potential to widen and improve automation. One of the examples which Ruediger was kind of talking about much in detail, example service virtualization part. So he has identified many of these examples, and some of the other areas that he also listed out were test design, which we all know it's a heavy manual process. Test data preparation, another extremely manual effort. Building of test case itself, a lot of time is spent on getting the test data right for the test execution, and many such areas. But before I go around more into the depth, let me pause and do a quick poll on the challenges that you are facing currently in this testing life cycle. So Bala, may I request you to open up the poll?
Vishal, you can't seem to pick up any audio coming from you just there. You might have inadvertently muted yourself.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, we can hear you again now. I think you'd gone silent there for a little bit since the poll, so you might want to discuss the poll results, or you might want to just go back over anything you might have mentioned there in the last slide.
Okay, sorry about that. So yes, on the poll result, I think we talked about 53% on the test design from the challenges point of view, 61% on the test data preparation, 60% on the test environment, 32% on test execution, and 28% on service virtualization. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So if you see, most of these challenges are absolutely identifiable, and most of these things is what we are focusing on in our presentation today. And you will see what we talked about will completely resonate with whatever you have done as a poll out here. So returning back to this slide, which are the trends that we are seeing in the software industry? Shift left. Now, in this time of faster business cycle, it's very critical to ensure that the problems are resolved at the start itself. No wait time. Not only to improve the effectiveness and the quality of the output, but also to reduce a lot of rework costs which is associated with doing the testing at the end. And one of the reports, the analyst report I was reading, it says that 80% of the surveyed folks welcome the concept of shift left. So definitely a real need and the top of the mind for any QA or a dev manager. Now with the budget for development constrained day by day, and we all kind of are into the same game, it becomes necessary to ensure that the deliverable of the development are 100% in line with our expectation, the expectation of the development, which implies what? Which implies that software needs to be assured at the moment it starts churning out of the development team. The second trend which is coming up is test data generation. You have given a lot of weightage to test data preparation, 61%, highest among the lot. So it's definitely a real need. I think the most sought after wish for any QA person is to generate effective test data. Now the QA person is actually sandwiched between two things. On one side, he has to work with an unrealistic data that he needs to create manually and many a times on the fly, versus the data which is easily available in the production side, but very hard to use due to the data protection norms. Now test data preparation is certainly a very laborious and a time intensive job. The easier the data could be pulled, the lower would be the cycle time for executing the test case, which will contribute to the reduction of the test cycle time. Virtualization, not so big trend from the point of view of the survey, actually the lowest. But if you see, this is the trend which is catching up very, very fast in the QA world. Now it deals with how the environment can be made constraint-free, so this doesn't hinder the testing process, irrespective of the availability of the development software component. The whole focus hovers around how can the idle time of the software testing lifecycle be optimized. The need to reduce cost, the reduced business cycle time, aggressively both of these trends join hand to drive and push the adoption in the market, and that's what we have been seeing. Let's take one more on the continuous delivery side. Now, the continuous delivery was not there as a part of the survey, but then this is something which we are starting to see as business is getting more demanding, asking for the faster development time. The changes that used to be affected in months are now getting affected in weeks, if not in days. Now what used to go as a complete application functionality in the production are now getting into as a logical bits with continuous addition of feature functionality to the application. Now the pressure of outpacing competition is forcing this business to constantly innovate the way the business is done. And this redefine, the customer is always going ahead to their end customer, redefining this value in the shorter span of time. IT does its bit of contribution by constantly aligning with the business needs, but the pressure comes on the testing team as well to ensure that the testing is agile, to ensure that every new feature doesn't negatively impact the features that are already running in the production. So while we explored in research We also went to our key customers and the project team to ascertain the real challenges that they were experiencing in their test cycle. And this is what we found. So pardon on the network today. Yeah, sorry. The voices. Now they validated all that you have heard Ruediger talking about, specifically on the faster development cycle, complexity of development, the bottlenecks that are there in the testing world, be it from the time perspective, or maybe because you are using multiple discrete testing tools in the entire testing process. Now picking up a few voices and how they are sort of interpreted. Now when they say they need to automate the entire test cycle, they actually mean how various processes in the test life cycle can be made to work seamlessly and how much automatically. Now take the other scenario. When they say they need to reduce the time to create the test data, actually they meant how it is possible to reduce the complexity of test data preparation and the test data set building. My belief is as long as they have the right test data and the test data that meets a data privacy norm, it doesn't matter whether the data is created synthetically or subsetted from the production data. Obviously there are pros and cons in either side. Take another example of rework. Now when they say that they do not want any rework, they actually meant how it is possible for test the software as much close to the build of the component and as much earlier in the development phase. Now recently we are also seeing customers talking about more and more test environment management to deal with the unacceptable time it takes to set up the test environment. And probably the reason why 60% of you are talking about test environment management as a real challenge. Now, very significant bottleneck, especially if it is not planned timely. Now, the availability of technologies, the need in the market, and that has led us to build this seamless end-to-end integrated solution that defines how we have been looking the test automation till this time and how TCS wants to define it for now. Now, we have the solution. And that's the solution which is there in this next slide, ITS. So what we wanted to do is expand the definition of test automation from just being the test execution to test automation in a real sense, which includes test design, test data management, service virtualization, test execution, basically all the challenges to be sorted and solved. Now this is the innovation that we are bringing to the market, and we believe it's a seamless solution with exponentially more impact than its individual component. Now while we were building the solution, the question that was running in our mind was how a customer be able to reduce the TCO on testing, reduce the complexity, and accelerate the whole process of software testing. Now this translated to the changes that needs to be made at the level of a tester. How can he be able to generate a scenario in a convenient fashion? How can he be able to prepare the test case in an automated way? How can he be able to bind the test case with a test scenario and generate test cases much faster than it would normally take him to build manually? How can he be able to create the service model in an automated fashion? And further, automatically create necessary request response pair needed for that service. Is it not true that many of you would be wanting to move away from multiple tools for various processes in software testing lifecycle and wish for a single tool to do the job, end-to-end job? This is the problem that ITS solves. It covers the automation of UI testing, middleware testing, test design creation, test data management, service virtualization, and test execution, which has sort of become a commoditized now. It is an integrated approach using the best of the breed, well-established, market-leading solutions, providing end-to-end experience in the software testing process. Now, the solution has originated based on the challenges that we have experienced, both as being a system integrator and also being a provider of independent test and validation services. And this is where we are focusing, taking away from unruly cacophonic environment to a calm symphonic environment. Now this is the power that we are bringing to you. So our proposition is a software testing lifecycle automation with a wide-angle unified reporting, giving visibility across the entire testing cycle. And we bring this along with the smartness and intelligence, which our innovative solution ITS is converging. Why smart? Because the complete cycle is automated, like I described earlier. And why intelligent? Because the tool itself brings the capability to build ready to execute test cases by binding the data. So At this time, I will again take a pause and probably seek a poll from you. Bala, can you put up the poll, please? Okay, thanks, Bala. So again, as expected, this is very encouraging to see that whatever our thought process is resonating in the real world. Yeah, Bala, we can move on. Okay. Okay, so moving on, the next few slides are the screenshot of the solution that we have built. I'm sorry the screen is not as clear as I was expecting. However, I'll walk them through. This screen that you are seeing right now is a home screen where you would be able to create the test project, navigate through the project files, view the test reports. It's actually guide you building the test case for UI as well as middleware testing. The next screen, the one in display, is primarily the screen for the UI testing. Each box is a process step and has a specific task to perform. For example, model process. It helps translate the requirement from design artifacts to design for the business process model. Generate requirement. It converts these models into the test scenarios. Test automation. It basically helps in creating the test data and build the test case. Again, as explained to you earlier, using the test data generation feature or that module that we have in our application. Now, this feature has a unique facility to configure and customize various type of test data, such as boundary condition or negative test data, etc., and using various rules. And finally, test execution that runs a test case. So basically, while on one hand, ITS simplifies the test design process, on the other hand, it ensures that the test case has maximum coverage with the least manual effort. I'll go to the next one. This is around the test case to be, or building of test case to be used for the middleware or integration testing. The web service are used to create these test cases, understanding the service operations underneath those web services. The process is automated and it brings the agility in testing. Like in the previous case for this middleware testing, this screen is for a similar automation which builds the business service models. So it generates the service model and combined with the request response pair, which is the data that the service model needs to use. This is where we also make the service model more intelligent. No static data, but data coming from the production, getting the right kind of a feed to build a sort of a real simulated service model. Now, further, the option of selecting the required services in the virtual model brings the benefit of flexibility and reuse across the entire test scenarios. Now, this way, ITS significantly reduces the non-productivity time from the test cycle and accelerates the time to market for the application. And if you look into the next slide, this is on the reporting side. The solution has a unique feature to provide a dashboard for a complete test cycle, both at the level of project as well as the level of a program. And it also has an ability to customize for specific need. Now, the test execution summary, the defect summary, the defect severity, test coverage, service availability, and a lot more such reports can easily provide a glance to the big picture as well as the details underneath. So our journey with the development of ITS has been very significant. Many man-months of investment have already gone in, and sure, we are working for a long haul. We are just about to launch the release 2 of the solution, and we already have a 1-year roadmap available with us. A constant effort has been made for a wider and a deeper technology coverage for this innovative solution. Just to give you an idea of the kind of benefits, so we have been engaging with our various customers to ascertain the applicability of our end-to-end solution, and the results have been quite encouraging. For example, this is a specific case in hand, which we have recently concluded as a pilot. Now, we have seen the manual effort reduction in the tune of 40%, and primarily this has come from test design, the test data preparation, and the service virtualization area. Now, in the process, we saw the test cycle time reduced by about 30%. Overall cost for QA was reduced by about 20% because lower number of resources were needed to build the data. And further, the coverage for testing increased as a bigger test data set was conveniently prepared, even with the reduced resources. Now, it also affected the increase in the quality of the testing. So, one thing I would like you to take away at the end of this session is how TCS is redefining the space of test automation, not only by extending the boundaries, but at the same time breaking the silo of testing process by seamlessly integrating them. And this is a futuristic solution that we bring to you. So this brings into my session. I'm sure you may have posted questions on the control panel, and we'll be happy to answer them. Dara, you may want to take control and read out the questions.
Okay, I'm going to just take back control of the screen here now. Just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so we're now going to open the floor to your questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions field on your control panel. And just while you're typing your questions, I'm going to go through 1 or 2 of the slides here. First of all, the recording of this webinar will be available in the EuroSTAR webinar archive, and there you'll find over 80 other on-demand webinars. By joining the EuroSTAR community, you'll get access to over 600 software testing presentations, webinars, videos, podcasts, ebooks, and more. This year's conference is taking place at the Swedish Exhibition and Congress Center in Gothenburg, Sweden, from the 4th to the 7th of November. We hope you can make it. We already have over 750 confirmed attendees. So now we're just going to have a look at some of the questions that have come in. The first question I have here is, what is your long-term view on the direction of test automation? Do you think the market has started adopting?
Well, this is Ruediger here. I think that is a question to the analyst. And therefore, I think I will pick it up. So the question is, what is your long-term view on the direction of test automation? Now, our studies have shown that there is a growing awareness and appreciation of cost of system failures in light of high-profile incidents, especially in government and financial sector projects, especially recently, which we have also mentioned in our recent published study on test and test automation. And therefore, the market clearly will grow. There is no doubt. Our forecast is that the market from 2012 to 2017 will grow more than 10% compound annual growth rate. And that is because companies are forced to ensure shorter testing cycles, which also reduce software development cycles. Hopefully, and that is a promise currently of the vendors, is that there will be less errors in the code, which is clearly in light of the branding of the company. If it delivers their software also to partners and customers and makes them accessible and available via internet shops and delivery centers, that these failures will get away by better testing. And the testing automation will also ensure that there are complete test loops which do not have any holes in between, so that bugs could not escape, so to speak, from the test cycle. And therefore the market clearly will grow in light of all the virtualization and growing complexity that we have discussed at the beginning of this short seminar. And I think with that I will give it back to our moderator, Dara.
Thank you. The next question I have here is, in what types of scenarios will ITS be applicable? Okay, let me take this up, Dara. So I'm glad this question is has come up. Now ITS, as I talked about, would be better suited for the scenario where you are looking for integration between the component, end-to-end integration. Now, cutting across test design, test data management, service virtualization, the test automation part. The more the area of such automation, the merrier it would be for ITS. Now, it can be aptly leveraged if you want to, say, automate the process of creating virtual service model, or for that matter, automatically create the test case for GUI testing. Basically wanting to create numerous service models to be leveraged across organization in the shortest span of time. And if you have such need, ITS definitely fits in out there. And also, like I mentioned, ITS has the capability to build test data for the test cases. Now, whether it is pulling data from production or creating synthetically. So in case you have a test data management initiative, for example, going on, and you want to integrate it with your test automation initiative, ITS could definitely be given a serious consideration. So in nutshell, I would say ITS is suitable to any place where you want to bring in automation across the testing lifecycle. Hope that answers. The next question I have here is, could you throw some light on the benefits that integrated testing suites can bring when compared to point solutions for testing?
So Ruediger, probably you can take that.
Yeah, I think that is a question to me. Well, the benefits of the integrated test suite. I mean, there are two options to integrate something, including the testing. It could be seen as integrating the test suites in itself from an integrated solution, which allow also add-ons in terms of point solution that fit into this integrated test environment. Clearly that will bring an advantage to users because they may use their current tools, but also as part of a completely integrated suite. As mentioned beforehand, there will be no logical holes in the complete test cycle. And I think what we have seen during, I think it was the first poll question, that current challenges for the test teams are mainly in test data preparation and test environment management, and especially in this combination, more than 60% answered the question in this case in this way. That is where most benefits can come from the integrated test automation suites, because here clearly with the data preparation and the test data environment management, most of the help will come from the integrated suites if compared to point solutions. Of course, you can do usability tests and user interface tests with a very simple tool, but to manage the complete environment, including distributed teams, and also get the benefits from analyzing the results at the end, that is clearly only available for integrated test environments and test automation. And as I said before, the market is growing currently more than 10% compound annual growth rate, which is much more than the IT. The IT spending overall is growing worldwide, and it is also more than packaged application growth, which is in the range of about 5 to 6%. There are, of course, some exceptions in the mobile and then the analytics space, but overall this shows that software is developed, not only packaged applications are used, and the testing and the development is going in the direction to enhance existing enterprise applications and enhance them in a way to cloudify them, as discussed earlier, and to mobilize the access to these applications. And it doesn't mean to develop completely new applications, but to develop integration components that bring together the new mobility and new mobile devices with access to the back-end enterprise system. And these are software components as part of a cloud solution that are not completely independent, but require during the test cycle access to back-end systems, and service virtualization is one of the components that make it much more easier to include such constrained resources in the test cycles, and therefore I think that there is a very clear advantage of integrated solutions. And by the way, we are not seeing this only in the test environment and the software development environment, but also we have seen that with enterprise applications, where we in the past had ERP systems having very, very few components, and today they span a complete range of different functionalities, including the mobile aspect and including business intelligence and many, many, many more things that are integrated in these enterprise applications. So they work, so to speak, as a black hole for applications. And the same, you could say, that is the case for integrated test suites. The more complex the challenges are, the more complex and the more comprehensive the reaction needs to be, and that is only possible by an integrated test automation suite. That was a long answer, but I think I can give the word back to Dwaha, our moderator now.
The next question I have here is, we use agile methodology. Wouldn't ITS bring inflexibility to my environment?
Yeah, ITS, obviously it's targeted to me. Well, in my opinion, I would say the simple answer is no, because the whole purpose of building the solution is to provide agility. So ITS grows very well with the agile methodology. Now, what ITS ensures is that the test case that has been executed previously are reused and leveraged effectively for future feature developments, ensuring that the new development doesn't break the current application anywhere, and the whole process of regression testing is also automated. Now, consider another scenario around test data preparation. Now, while you are going ahead with the agile development, would you have luxury to spend more time in the test data preparation? Simple no. The test data preparation feature of ITS is actually a boon for agile development, where the data preparation time is reduced significantly. Now consider another case on how ITS treats service virtualization. It helps create these models fully loaded with data automatically and creating numerous of them all at one time. Now, it does bring agility. So in my opinion, ITS brings flexibility to the system. Sarah?
The next question I have here is ITS available in a managed service mode or on the cloud?
Okay, another ITS. ITS is currently taken to the customer as a managed service. The cloud option is currently not available. We fully recognize the need from our customer to have the cloud option, and we are working, and this is in the part of our roadmap in the current upcoming releases. Now currently we are in release 3. Our direction towards this particular solution, ITS, is anywhere, anytime testing. So that would be the mantra for ITS. So as I mentioned, we are on a long haul of the solution development. So cloudification would definitely be there at some point soon.
The next question I have here is, what are your views on the market direction on service virtualization?
Market question, something to the analyst, I think. So it's Ruediger here again, and I think I will try to answer where we would see service virtualization going. Well, service virtualization is one of the last trends of testing environments. The market is picking up because enterprises slowly see the benefits of service virtualization. Service virtualization is what also a recent study has shown not clear to everybody what it means. So we think that the vendors who offer those tools need to invest a little bit more in education and awareness for testing teams. I mean, most of the testing teams are aware of what service virtualization is, but in general in the IT environment, in the larger IT environment, it may not known in a sense that it is part of the general vocabulary of the IT teams. However, service virtualization clearly allows to get much better and more complete test results in environments where there are dramatically constrained resources, as discussed earlier, like the enterprise systems that are available for customer support 24/7. These systems cannot be shut down for customer access only for testing purposes. There needs to be another mechanism, and these servers can be virtualized, and these virtualized environments can then be used for the back-end system, or instead of the back-end system, in the test environment, which will allow test teams to get a response like from a real system and not just from a small mock-up that tries to mimic some of the functionality of the back-end systems. So service virtualization is clearly a big step forward in testing overall, and therefore I think this will have a great future. It is one of the last very good developments for testing environments, and the market clearly will grow here because there are a couple of vendors that have taken the chance to enhance their products in the direction of service virtualization. And with this, back to our moderator, Dara.
I think we have time for one last question here, and the question I have is, an initiative on service virtualization is already underway in my company. How will ITS integrate with that?
Okay, ITS again. So I think it's a very real question. Reuse of investment is basically the theme around it, and a question which is actually rubber meeting the road kind of a scenario. So I think in principle this can be achieved. However, we need to be doing a small due diligence to ensure that the technology fitment of our solution and the environment that you have needs to be kind of mapped. We would like our customer to definitely leverage the investment that they have already made and work with them to find out the options available and suggest those options available. So I would say a small due diligence would kind of help us to identify the way out for making sure it's a win-win on either side.
We are unfortunately out of time for today, and I just want to thank today's presenters, Vishal, Mehrotra, and Ruediger Spies, for today's webinar. I'd also like to thank all the attendees for attending the webinar and all your questions. If your question wasn't asked during this Q&A, I will send these across to the presenters, and we'll come back to you shortly with a blog post with all the answers. We are out of time, like I mentioned. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
See you at the conference.
Thank
Goodbye.
you all.